So another aspect with the stories is, again, with the proving of ourselves that we're right. I had, and some of you have heard me talk about this before, because this is a story that I've shared many times. When I'm not sure what year, maybe 2013, 2014. And I had talked to my accountant in February of that year. In Canada, we pay taxes in April. So I talked to her in February. She gave me an approximate amount that I would need to be paying the government in April. And I believe it was about $2,000. And then she sent out the information. So we picked it up from the mail on, it was a Thursday. And we went out for supper, and I just took the mail in with me, and we were sitting having supper and opened it up. And my tax bill, instead of being $2,000, was I think $5,200 or something like that. And back then that was a lot of money. And they were due in, I believe it was 10 days. And I was sick. I was scared. I was freaked out. I was mad. Oh, suddenly it was all her fault. And you know, this wouldn't have happened if I would have had a better accountant. Like, I had all this stuff, and I went on for about half an hour. So hubby and I were sitting there, and I was like, rawr and mad. And I had all this stuff going on. And what I realized in about, once I did that for a little while, what I realized was, if I continued to tell that story, I would not be able to actualize the money. I just knew that for sure. Now, I had started my 10% account. This must have been, maybe it was even 2012. Anyway, I had started my 10% account. So I did actually have that amount of money in my 10% account, and I didn't want to use it. I was like, no, that is not, my 10% account is not for taxes. That is for my me money. That's my honoring of me money. So I'm not going to touch it. So what I knew was I needed to get out of story and into question. So I said to hubby, from this moment forward, we do not discuss this. And he's like, oh, okay. Because believe me, I'd been going and going and going. And I was like, nope, we're stopping this now. So the reason I remember that it was a Thursday is because the next day was Good Friday. And Good Friday in my world, we go and spend the day with family friends. And there's all of my family comes. I've got a large family. I've got 4 sisters. They've all got families, my parents, and then other family comes. So it's this huge group get together. And so I went to this, and I knew I couldn't, not that I couldn't tell the story, but I knew if I told the story that I wouldn't create the money magically. Like, I knew that I would probably have to use my 10%. And so I was shocked at how much I actually wanted to tell the story. Like, it was so interesting to me because we're all sitting together as a group, and we're all, visiting, and I had a story to tell. I could actually tell them a story, because I don't often have, kind of trauma stuff. And this was something they'd all got behind me with, and they'd all been mad at my accountant with me. Like, I had it all, man. And I knew if I told it, that it would stop the magic that was possible. Now, that's because when I tell the story, what am I doing? I'm reinforcing how horrible it is and how bad it is and how true it is, even though it wasn't. But every time I'm telling it, I'm doing that. And so that's what was required, was for me to stop telling that story. And the other thing that I did was once, I said to hubby, okay, we're not having any more conversations about how horrible she is. And I went into question. So anytime it came to mind, what I would ask is, what else is possible to create this right away? What magic can I be to create? And again, I think it was just over 3,000 additional that I required, because I already had the 2,000 that she'd originally told me about. So just asking questions like that. So I would just force myself to do that. When I wanted to play with the story, I would turn it around, turn it around. And then when I was at this family event, same thing, is that I wanted to to do to tell it and to share it and to have everybody agree with me and be mad too. And I just kept stopping. And in fact, once I had to get up and leave the room to stop myself. It was so funny. Now it's so funny. At the time I was like, man, I am just crazy. And I'm that too. And so then I made myself not. So that night at 6:00, and I remember the time because we got into the vehicle to leave. And so I would found out about it about 5:00 the day before. So 25 hours later, 6:00, got in the car, looked at my phone, which I hadn't looked at all day, and there were 2 orders in my store. And from the same person, and it was for a coaching program that I'd had in my store for probably 8 months, and nobody had ever bought. And she happened to buy 2, which the total was just over $3,200. So it was such a gift for me because what I knew then was the magic of not telling the story. Because I knew that if I would have spent, the rest of the evening, the night before, complaining and going to how wrong it was and how horrible the accountant was, and the next day if I'd have shared it with everybody, and we'd all went into the trauma of it, you can't be magic from that heaviness. You can't be magic from that space. You're stuck in the wrongness of it. You're stuck in the limitation, and you're going to prove yourself right. So that's another way to look at the stories that you're telling. Is it so that you can have that be more valuable than the magic that you be? The magic that you can actually create? Like, what is really going on when it's more valuable to you to tell the story than it is to actually be the invitation for what you'd like it to be? Yeah. And I tell you what, every time since then, and that was a number of years ago, that I've wanted to tell the story from that energy of I want people to agree with me, is this no, I remember that. I remember that moment. I remember turning my phone on and going, holy shit, what is actually possible when I don't make the story significant? Whew. Yeah. So all of those stories that you're making significant in your world, you're just utilizing to stop the magic of you. And ultimately what you're doing is ensuring that you then fit into this reality. You'll be just like everybody else. How many people have problems with your accountants and taxes and frustrated with it, and how dare the government even want taxes, and it's a common story. So I could have used it to fit in. I could have used it to have everybody be behind me and help me and, be mad with me. And it's no. What I'd like to create on the planet is so much more magic, so much more possibilities, and those are all way beyond story. Possibilities and magic and story, they can't be in the same room together. Yeah. And so again, this is one of the 10 keys of freedom that we talk about in the foundation class. And I've read the kind of the description from the actual manual, because it's such a brilliant key that is truly a key to freedom, truly a key to freedom. The more that you stop telling the stories, the more magic that you will be. And so for any of you, I always use, hashtag get your butt to foundation. And of course, I've got many coming up around the world. I've got one starting in Sitka, Alaska next week. Oh my gosh. Then right here at our home, it's called the Pool Party Foundation in August. We live near Edmonton, Alberta. Then off to Denmark, early September. Then Switzerland, then Lloydminster, Alberta / Saskatchewan, and then Las Vegas, and then New York City, and Toronto next year. And there'll be so many more added, but just so you guys know, please get your butt to foundation and And if you have been to Foundation, yes, reread the Foundation manual over and over and over, because there's so much in it. And the 10 keys to freedom to me are such a huge piece that once we actually start shifting and changing this stuff, when we stop telling the stories, when we start actually being the magic of us, I mean, truly, what else is possible?